Welcome to another episode of Myths for Sleep, where ancient oracles were about as reliable as your weather app's predictions, but with consequences slightly more catastrophic than just ruining your weekend barbecue. We're talking full-scale family annihilation with a side of psychological trauma that would make modern therapists rich. Now, before I get lost in the labyrinth of destiny like our future protagonist will, if you're new to the channel and enjoying these ancestral tragedies, help me out with that like button that's more stubborn than the Sphinx refusing to reveal her riddle. And if you think I can improve something, let me know how. After all, I make these videos for you to sleep better, not for me to stay awake questioning my life choices. Subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always wonder if I'm helping someone relax at 2 a.m. in Sao Paulo, or if there's someone pretending to pay attention in a boring Zoom meeting in Dublin while secretly listening to Greek tragedies. You know what's fascinating about prophecies? They're like those software updates that claim to improve user experience. Technically, they're giving you exactly what they promised, but somehow you end up worse off than before. Ancient Greek prophecies were particularly brutal in this regard. They had this delightful habit of being absolutely, devastatingly accurate while being completely useless for actually preventing the disaster they predicted. It's like having a smoke detector that only goes off after your house has already burned down. Today's story is peak Greek tragedy material, the kind of plot that would make modern soap opera writers weep with envy. We're talking about a guy who spent his entire life trying to avoid a horrible fate, only to sprint directly into it, while thinking he was being clever. It's like watching someone try to avoid spoilers for a movie by covering their ears and shouting LA, LA, LA while walking straight into a theater showing that exact film. From the moment you hear today's prophecy, you'll understand why ancient Greeks had such a complicated relationship with the gods. These divine beings had the emotional maturity of reality TV stars and the power to reshape destiny itself. They were like that friend who gives you helpful advice that somehow always makes your situation infinitely worse. A partir de agora vos viajante dos sonhos. From now on, you are a dream traveler, capable of witnessing firsthand the events that shaped one of the most brutally ironic stories in Greek mythology. You can feel every emotion, smell every hint of incense in the temples, taste the metallic fear in the air when dark prophecies are revealed, but you can never interfere with the course of events. If you're not lying down, that's fine, but if you are, close your eyes, because your journey begins now at Apollo's temple in Delphi, where a desperate king is about to receive the worst parenting news in history. Picture this scenario. You're a powerful king with a prosperous kingdom, a beautiful wife, armies at your command, treasure vaults full of gold. But something's missing. You want an heir. Seems simple enough, right? Just go to the temple, make a request to the gods, and wait for them to be generous. What could possibly go wrong? Well, if you thought literally everything, congratulations. You understand how Greek prophecies work. They're like those terms and conditions you agree to without reading. There's always a catch that's going to screw you over later, usually in the most creatively devastating way possible. The Greeks had this beautiful concept called hubris, basically, thinking you can outsmart fate. It never ends well. Ever. It's like trying to argue with customer service while the company is actively going bankrupt. Technically, you might have a point, but the universe has already moved on to more pressing matters, like destroying your entire bloodline. What makes today's story particularly delicious is how every single attempt to prevent the prophecy actually brings it closer to fulfillment. It's like those horror movies where the protagonist keeps making increasingly bad decisions while you're screaming at the screen, "Don't go in the basement." Except the basement is destiny, and the protagonist is an entire royal family. Today we're meeting Oedipus, a guy who started life being rejected by his own parents, grew up as an adopted prince without knowing anything about his origins, killed his father without recognizing him, married his mother thinking she was just some random widowed queen, and still managed to save an entire city from a people-eating monster. Oh, and detail, he did all of this while actively trying to prevent these things from happening. It's like trying not to think about a pink elephant while someone is literally painting pink elephants all around you. If this isn't material for a night of sleep filled with interesting dreams, I don't know what is. So settle in, because we're about to discover how a question about animal legs managed to break a cycle of terror that had lasted for years, and why sometimes the most obvious answer is the hardest one to see. Chapter 1. The Dark Prophecy. You're now standing among the majestic columns of Apollo's temple in Delphi, breathing in the intense aroma of frankincense, mixed with something you can't quite identify. Perhaps it's the scent of anxiety itself, because the air here is thick with tension that you could practically cut with a knife. The sacred vapors rising from the earth below create an otherworldly atmosphere that makes your skin tingle with supernatural awareness. King Laius of Thebes is kneeling before the altar, and you can see beads of sweat on his forehead, despite the cool mountain breeze filtering through the marble columns. The man looks like someone waiting for medical test results. That particular kind of nervous energy that comes from knowing your entire future hangs on what you're about to hear. Laius is basically that boss who has everything in life but still complains because one tiny thing is missing from his perfect set. He's got a prosperous kingdom that makes neighboring rulers green with envy, a wonderful wife named Jocasta, who's not only beautiful but actually seems to love him, rare in royal marriages, palaces that would make modern billionaires weep, armies that respect him, gold flowing like water, but no children. And for a Greek king, not having children is like being an influencer without followers. Technically you exist. But what's the point of all that power if there's no one to inherit your legendary Instagram account? Apollo, Laius whispers, and you can feel the vulnerability bleeding through his voice like a wound that won't heal. Grant me the grace of a son, an heir for my throne, for my legacy, for the continuation of my bloodline. There's something genuinely touching about the way he asks. This isn't royal arrogance demanding divine services. It's raw human desire laid bare before the gods. You can smell the offerings burning on the altar, fresh fruits, grains, wine poured in careful libation, the smoke carrying prayers upward like ancient emails to cosmic customer service. The temple is quiet, except for the crackling of sacred flames and the distant sound of wind through the mountain peaks. The desperation in Laius's voice is palpable. You can sense years of disappointment behind this moment. Feast days where other kings boasted about their sons' achievements, while Laius smiled politely and changed the subject. Sleepless nights, wondering what would happen to his kingdom when he died. The weight of an entire royal lineage resting on his shoulders with no one to pass it to. But then something shifts in the air like a cosmic gear clicking into place. A presence that makes the very atoms around you vibrate with power. It's like feeling a storm approaching, but instead of weather, it's divinity itself pressing down on the mortal world. The temperature seems to drop 10 degrees in seconds, and the flames on the altar flutter without any wind to disturb them. You feel a chill run up your spine as the voice of Apollo begins to resonate through the Pythia, the oracle priestess who sits in trance, her eyes rolled back, her body serving as a divine telephone. Laius, the voice echoes with an authority that makes your bones vibrate like tuning forks. Think twice before wishing for this son. You see Laius's face light up for exactly 1 second. A son. The gods have heard. His prayers have been answered. But then the second part of the prophecy hits like a sledgehammer to the soul. For he will bring you to death, and will also be the ruin of your family. The silence that follows is so heavy you can hear your own heartbeat thundering in your ears. Laius freezes like someone just paused a video mid-frame. You can see the exact moment when his dream transforms into a nightmare, like watching someone receive terrible news and seeing all the color drain from their face in real time. It's the kind of silence that exists in hospital waiting rooms and divorce lawyers' offices, the silence of worlds ending. I don't understand, Laius stammers, his voice cracking like a teenager's. Apollo, surely there must be some misunderstanding, perhaps another interpretation. But the Pythia has already returned to her normal state, staring ahead with empty eyes, like a computer that's just finished processing a particularly devastating piece of software. The session is over. There's no but, no except if, no customer service department for divine prophecies. Greek oracles were like terms of service agreements. You might not like what you're agreeing to, but there's no negotiating with the cosmic legal department. You can feel Laius's world crumbling in real time. This is a man who came seeking the greatest blessing a king could ask for, and instead received what amounts to a divine death sentence wrapped in the exact gift he requested. It's like winning the lottery and discovering the prize money is cursed to destroy everyone you love. You watch Laius stumble out of the temple, like someone who's just been punched in the stomach by destiny itself. The poor man stops several times on the path back to his retinue, looking up at the sky as if expecting Apollo to shout, "Just kidding." But no cosmic laughter echoes from the heavens. The gods, you're beginning to understand, have many qualities, but a sense of humor about prophecies is definitely not one of them. They're like that friend who spoils movie endings. Technically, they're giving you useful information, but in a way that completely ruins your entire experience. What makes this particularly cruel is the precision of divine irony. Laius got exactly what he asked for, the promise of a son. The universe just added some terms and conditions that he's definitely not going to appreciate. It's like ordering your dream car and discovering it comes with a built-in self-destruct mechanism that's set to activate at the worst possible moment. You can sense the wheels turning in Laius's mind as he tries to process this information. He's a smart man. You don't become a successful king by being stupid, but he's trapped in an impossible logic puzzle. Ignore a divine prophecy. That's basically declaring war on the cosmic order itself. Accept it. That means death and the destruction of everything he's worked to build. The tragic irony is already thick in the air like incense smoke. What Laius doesn't know yet, but you, as a dream traveler, can sense with growing dread, is that every attempt to avoid this prophecy will only draw him closer to the fate he fears. It's the fundamental principle of Greek tragedy. What you run from chases you, and what you chase runs from you. The universe has a twisted sense of humor that way. It gives you exactly what you try to prevent, usually through the very actions you take to prevent it. As you watch Laius walking away, shoulders bent under the weight of impossible knowledge, you can almost see the threads of fate beginning to weave themselves around him. The prophecy isn't just a prediction. It's become a gravitational force, pulling events into its orbit like a black hole of destiny. And the most terrifying part, Laius will make every choice that brings the prophecy to life while believing he's being clever enough to avoid it. The temple grows quiet again, but the silence now feels different. It's not peaceful, It's expectant, like the pause before thunder after you've seen the lightning. The gods have spoken, the die is cast, and somewhere in the cosmic machinery of fate, gears are beginning to turn that will crush an entire royal family in their relentless motion. Chapter 2. The condemned baby. You're now transported to the royal chambers of Thebes, several months later. The environment should be festive. After all, a prince has been born, but the atmosphere is heavier than a shareholders' meeting, where everyone knows the company is about to declare bankruptcy. Jocasta is radiant holding the baby, completely oblivious to her husband's existential crisis, brewing like a toxic storm cloud in the corner of the room. "Laius, darling, we'll finally have our son," she exclaims, with that glow in her eyes that only new mothers who've just joined the parenting club can achieve. It's the look of someone who's discovered a secret that makes all the sleep deprivation and physical trauma worth it. You can see little Oedipus in her arms, a perfectly normal baby, chubby, healthy, making those adorable little noises that babies make when they're not plotting to destroy their parents' lives. He doesn't look like a future patricidal incestuous king, does he? But appearances deceive. We also don't think that friendly guy from HR is going to fire us via email on a Friday at 6 p.m., but here we are, updating our LinkedIn profiles and questioning our life choices. The baby is actually beautiful, one of those infants that makes people stop and coo involuntarily. His tiny fingers are perfectly formed, his breathing is steady and strong, and when he opens his eyes, they're bright and alert. There's absolutely nothing about this child that screams future destroyer of families. If anything, he looks like the kind of baby that would star in diaper commercials and make ovaries across the kingdom spontaneously explode with maternal yearning. Laius stares at his son like the infant is a ticking time bomb disguised as a Gerber baby. You can practically see the thoughts colliding in his head, like bumper cars at a karmic carnival. He's so small. How can something so small destroy me? Maybe if I just ignore the prophecy. Maybe Apollo was having an off day. Maybe prophecies come with warranty exceptions. But Apollo's voice echoes in his memory like an annoying song that gets stuck on repeat in your brain. The poor king is in an impossible situation. Ignoring a divine prophecy is basically picking a fight with the cosmic forces that control reality itself, but accepting it means, well, death and family destruction. Not exactly the options you want on a restaurant menu, even if the service is divine. "What's wrong, Laius?" asks Jocasta, noticing that her husband looks like someone who just discovered they accidentally deleted all their computer files without making backups. "Isn't this what you wanted so desperately?" And then Laius, in yet another example of exemplary ancient marital communication, decides to tell his wife that their son is basically a walking prophecy of doom. You can feel the tension in the air, shifting like tectonic plates preparing for an earthquake. The way it does when someone mentions politics at a family dinner, or brings up that ex-boyfriend who shall not be named. The conversation that follows is one of those relationship moments that would make modern couples therapists reach for stronger coffee. Imagine having to explain to your spouse that the child you both created and love is prophesied to murder you and marry her. It's like having to announce that your adorable puppy is actually a werewolf. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. Jocasta listens to the entire story, and you watch horror growing on her face like a time-lapse video of mold spreading. It's like watching someone realize, in real time, that the person she loved and carried for 9 months comes with a curse built into his adorable little DNA. Imagine discovering that your dream house has a structural foundation made entirely of dynamite. That's roughly the emotional equivalent of what Jocasta is processing. "We can't keep this child," Jocasta says Laius after an argument that lasted hours and probably involved a lot of ancient Greek profanity that doesn't translate well. "He will be our downfall." Here's the first crucial mistake of the royal family of Thebes. They're trying to hack the cosmic system. It's like trying to fool YouTube's algorithm. Technically possible in theory, but the forces you're dealing with are bigger, smarter, and have infinitely more processing power than your mortal brain can comprehend. Jocasta, who isn't completely devoid of maternal instinct, unlike some reality TV mothers we could mention, makes a counteroffer that sounds reasonable by desperate mother standards. Don't kill the baby, just outsource the problem. It's the ancient equivalent of putting your troubles in a box and shipping them to someone else's zip code. "We'll do this," she proposes, holding her baby closer, as if physical proximity could protect him from cosmic forces. "We'll give the boy to a couple of shepherds to raise him far away from us." You can feel the temporary relief in the air, like pressure releasing from a valve. It's that feeling you get when you push a problem down the road, thinking you've solved it, but really you've just postponed the inevitable. They're basically trying to cancel a subscription to divine prophecy. Spoiler alert, there's no customer service department for cosmic destiny, and the terms are non-negotiable. But Laius, who apparently watched too many horror movies and knows that leaving the villain alive always causes problems later, secretly decides to give a final solution to the problem. You can feel the sinister shift in his energy, like watching someone transform from concerned father to Greek tragedy character in real time. It's the moment when reasonable worry becomes something much darker and more irreversible. The change in Laius is subtle but chilling. His jaw sets in a way that suggests he's made a decision that can't be unmade. His eyes develop that particular hardness that comes from convincing yourself that terrible actions are necessary for the greater good. It's the look of someone who's about to do something that will haunt him forever, but believes he has no choice. On the day of their Greek gift to the baby, Laius calls a trusted shepherd. The atmosphere is charged with that heavy energy of irreversible decisions being made by people who think they're being clever. You can smell the fear, sweat, and desperate determination mixing in the air like toxic perfume. "Take him to an abandoned grove," orders Laius, handing over his own son like he's disposing of organic waste, "and leave him there for the wild beasts to care for." You can feel the shepherd's shock like a physical blow. The man is looking at this innocent baby in his arms and thinking, "My boss has completely lost his mind." It's like receiving an order from your manager that's so absurd you wonder if you're being tested by some cosmic prank show. Except the prank involves infanticide, and the audience is made up of indifferent gods. The shepherd, let's call him the first decent human being in this story, finds himself holding a baby who's done nothing wrong, except exist according to divine prophecy. You can see the moral conflict playing out across his weathered features. He's a simple man who tends sheep, and probably never expected to become the pivot point of cosmic destiny. Yet here he is, literally holding the future of kingdoms in his calloused hands. But here comes the first plot twist of our story. The shepherd has a heart. Instead of simply leaving the baby to become wolf lunch, he decides to give the child a fighting chance. He hangs Oedipus by his feet from a tree, which explains the name Swollen Feet, in one of those creative interpretations of orders that technically complies while leaving room for hope. It's one of those moments that proves human decency can sometimes find loopholes even in divine tragedy. The shepherd is essentially saying, "Look, I'm following orders technically, but I'm not going to be the guy who murders a baby for his father's paranoia." He's creating what modern corporate employees would recognize as malicious compliance, doing exactly what was asked in a way that subverts the intended outcome. And this is how our future hero begins life, rejected by his parents, hanging from a tree like some macabre Christmas ornament, but destined to survive, because one anonymous shepherd decided to have a shred of humanity in a story that's rapidly running short on that particular commodity. The irony is already thick enough to choke on. Laius and Jocasta think they've solved their prophecy problem by eliminating the source. But they've actually just launched the chain of events that will make the prophecy inevitable. It's like trying to prevent a fire by pouring gasoline on it, while congratulating yourself on taking action. Destiny, it seems, has a sense of humor. A very dark, very twisted sense of humor, but humor nonetheless. Chapter 3. The Lost Prince. You're now witnessing one of those cosmic coincidences that makes you wonder if the universe has a screenplay writer with a very twisted sense of dramatic timing. A peasant named Phoebus is walking through the forest, probably thinking about cheap prices or wondering what his wife is making for dinner, when he hears something that will change multiple royal bloodlines forever: the cry of a baby. Picture this scene. You're a simple farmer living your best rustic life, minding your own business, when suddenly you stumble upon what is essentially a royal baby, hanging from a tree like some kind of aristocratic fruit. It's like finding a Lamborghini abandoned in a cornfield, technically a stroke of luck, but you can't help wondering what kind of story led to this moment. Phoebus approaches the tree and sees little Oedipus dangling there, and you can feel his shock mixing with compassion. This isn't just any abandoned baby. This child has clearly been through something traumatic. His tiny feet are swollen and marked from the bindings, hence the name that will stick with him forever. It's like getting a nickname from the worst day of your life, and having everyone call you that for eternity. Holy Zeus, Phoebus mutters, carefully untying the infant. What kind of monster abandons a baby like this? The irony is delicious. The monster is actually the baby's own father. But Phoebus has no way of knowing that this crying infant is Prince Oedipus of Thebes, future solver of riddles and destroyer of families. To him, it's just a child who needs help, and sometimes the most profound moments in history happen when ordinary people make simple, decent choices. You follow Phoebus as he carries the baby home to his modest cottage, where his wife awaits. The woman takes one look at the infant, and you can see her maternal instincts kicking in harder than a mule with anger management issues. She's been unable to have children of her own, and suddenly the gods have literally delivered a baby to their doorstep. It's like the ancient equivalent of finding a puppy in a cardboard box. Except this puppy is destined to become king, and possibly destroy civilization as they know it. Let's keep him, proposes Phoebus's wife, who clearly doesn't understand that taking in mysterious babies in Greek mythology is like accepting friend requests from people with no profile picture. It might seem innocent, but you're probably about to get involved in some serious drama. The couple adopts the boy, naming him Oedipus, swollen feet, which is both accurate and tragically prophetic. It's the kind of name that would get you bullied in modern elementary school, but in ancient Greece, it was just another Tuesday. They raise him as their own son, and here's where the story gets beautifully, heartbreakingly normal for a while. Oedipus grows up thinking he's the son of simple farmers. Imagine being raised in a loving, humble household, believing your biggest inheritance will be a flock of sheep and maybe some chickens, when you're actually the heir to a throne and the subject of cosmic prophecies. It's like thinking you're adopted into a middle-class family when you're actually heir to Amazon, except Jeff Bezos tried to have you killed as a baby. The kid grows up strong, healthy, and remarkably bright. You can see him playing with other peasant children, learning to tend sheep, helping his adoptive parents with daily chores, completely unaware that he's technically royalty slumming it in the countryside. He's like a prince in a Disney movie, except instead of talking animals giving him life advice, he's got actual sheep who are notably less helpful with personal development. But here's the thing about truth. It has this annoying habit of surfacing at the worst possible moments, like that embarrassing photo from college that someone posts just as you're interviewing for your dream job. Oedipus grows into his teens robust and confident, excelling at everything he tries, which probably should have been a clue that he wasn't exactly peasant stock. One day, during what starts as a normal teenage disagreement, the kind of argument that usually involves whose turn it is to clean the goat pen, one of his friends drops a verbal bomb that detonates Oedipus's entire sense of identity. "Shut up," you foundling, the other boy spits with the particular cruelty that only adolescents can master. You can feel the moment when Oedipus's world tilts on its axis. Foundling isn't just an insult, it's apparently the truth that everyone in his village knows except him. It's like discovering that everyone's been pretending not to notice you've had toilet paper stuck to your shoe for your entire life. Except instead of toilet paper, it's your entire identity. The confrontation escalates quickly. Oedipus grabs the other boy by the throat, and here we see the first glimpse of that famous temper that will later get him into considerably more trouble, demanding to know what he means. "Everyone knows you were found in the forest," the boy gasps, probably regretting his word choice as Oedipus's grip tightens, hanging from a tree like a rejected sacrifice to the gods. The revelation hits Oedipus like a cosmic slap to the face. Everything he thought he knew about himself, his parentage, his origins, his place in the world, crumbles like a house of cards in a hurricane. You can feel his confusion mixing with anger and a growing need for answers that threatens to consume him entirely. That night, Oedipus confronts his adoptive parents, and the painful truth comes spilling out like wine from a broken amphora. Phoebus and his wife, who clearly never took a class in how to tell your adopted son he's possibly royal without causing existential crisis, fumble through the story of finding him in the forest. "We wanted to tell you," Phoebus's wife says, tears streaming down her weathered face, "but you were so happy, so loved. We hoped it wouldn't matter. But it does matter. It matters more than anything, because Oedipus is now a young man who's discovered that his entire life has been built on a foundation of well-intentioned lies. It's like finding out your whole family has been actors in an elaborate reality show starring you. Except there's no prize money at the end. Just existential confusion and a burning need to know who you really are. The next morning, Oedipus makes a decision that will echo through history. He's going to Delphi to consult the oracle. Because if there's one thing we've learned about the oracle at Delphi, it's that she always gives people exactly the information they need to royally screw up their lives in the most spectacular way possible. "I have to know who I really am," he tells his adoptive parents, shouldering a pack with the determination of someone who's about to make a series of catastrophically poor decisions while believing he's being rational. As you watch him walking away from the only family he's ever known, heading toward a destiny that's already been written in divine stone, you can't help but appreciate the cosmic irony. Oedipus is seeking the truth about his identity, and he's going to find it in the most traumatic way imaginable. It's like wanting to know what's in the mystery meat at a questionable restaurant. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss, but humans are cursed with curiosity. The threads of fate are tightening around him, like a cosmic noose, and he has no idea that every step toward discovering his true identity is also a step toward fulfilling the very prophecy his birth parents tried so desperately to avoid. Chapter 4. The fatal encounter. You're now traveling alongside Oedipus on the dusty road to Delphi, feeling the Mediterranean sun beating down and the weight of cosmic irony pressing against your shoulders like an invisible backpack full of tragic destiny. The young man walks with the confident stride of someone who believes he's about to solve the mystery of his life, completely unaware that he's actually walking into the setup for the most dysfunctional family reunion in mythological history. Oedipus has grown into exactly the kind of young man you'd expect from someone with royal blood and a farmer's work ethic, strong, intelligent, and carrying himself with that particular confidence that comes from never having failed at anything important. He's like a protagonist in an action movie who hasn't yet realized he's actually in a Greek tragedy, where the hero's greatest strength inevitably becomes the instrument of their downfall. The road to Delphi is busy with travelers, pilgrims, merchants, and the occasional con artist selling blessed trinkets that are about as divine as a used car salesman's promise. You can smell the dust, sweat, and hope mixed with anxiety that permeates any place where people go seeking answers from the gods. It's the ancient equivalent of a spiritual wellness retreat, except with more sandals and significantly higher stakes. When Oedipus finally reaches the temple, the oracle's response is, well, let's just say it makes his adoption revelation look like a minor paperwork mix-up. The Pythia, speaking for Apollo in that cosmic customer service voice that brooks no argument, delivers a prophecy that would make a horror movie writer reach for stronger coffee. Do not insist on wanting to know more. The oracle declares with the kind of authority that makes your soul vibrate. If you approach your true parents, you will bring them only disgrace. You are destined to kill your father and marry your mother. The silence that follows is the kind you experience in emergency rooms and bankruptcy courts. The silence of worlds ending and new hells beginning. Oedipus stands there like someone who just received their own death sentence wrapped in a riddle, which is basically what just happened. You can feel his mind racing through the implications like a computer trying to process a virus. Kill his father? Marry his mother? The poor guy probably wishes he'd never left the sheep farm, where the biggest moral dilemma was whether to name the lambs before slaughtering them for dinner. Here's where Oedipus makes his first catastrophically logical decision. If he's destined to kill his parents, he simply won't go home. Problem solved. Right? It's like trying to avoid getting wet by running toward the rain. Technically, it seems like movement away from the problem, but you're actually sprinting directly into the storm. I'll never return to Corinth, he declares to the indifferent sky, because that's where he thinks his parents live. I'll make my own way in the world. The cosmic irony is so thick you could spread it on bread. Oedipus is trying to protect Phoebus and his wife, who aren't actually his parents, by staying away from them, while simultaneously ensuring he'll run directly into his actual parents, whom he's never met. It's like trying to avoid spoilers for a movie by watching the sequel first. So our hero sets off in the opposite direction from home, feeling rather proud of himself for outsmarting fate. He's basically doing the ancient equivalent of changing his social media status to its complicated with destiny itself, not realizing that fate has already slid into his DMs and is planning something spectacular. The road Oedipus chooses leads toward Thebes, because of course it does. In Greek mythology, trying to avoid your hometown inevitably leads you to places that are infinitely worse for your psychological well-being. It's like trying to avoid your ex at a party and accidentally walking into their family reunion. As he travels, you can see Oedipus growing more confident in his decision. He's young, strong, intelligent, and believes he's successfully hacked the system of divine prophecy. He probably feels like a genius who's found a loophole in cosmic law, when he's actually a mouse who thinks he's outsmarted the maze while running directly toward the cheese that will trigger the trap. Then comes the moment that will haunt Greek literature forever, the narrow crossroads where three paths meet. It's one of those geographical locations that should come with a warning sign: caution, this intersection has been known to cause patricide and severe family dysfunction. Proceed with extreme caution. You can feel the tension building like static electricity before a storm. Two parties are approaching this crossroads from different directions, and the cosmic timing is so precise it's like watching a divine choreographer orchestrating the world's most tragic ballet. From one direction comes Oedipus, young and confident, maybe humming to himself, or thinking about how clever he's been to avoid his terrible fate. From the other direction comes a royal procession, and if this were a movie, the audience would be screaming at the screen, because they can see what's coming even if the characters can't. The royal party consists of King Laius himself, though Oedipus doesn't know this, a herald, and a few servants. Laius is traveling incognito to Delphi because he's been having disturbing dreams and wants to know if his son is really dead. It's like the universe's most twisted version of sliding doors. If either party had left 5 minutes earlier or later, world history would have been completely different. But they arrive at exactly the same moment, because that's how Greek tragedy works. The gods have impeccable timing when it comes to orchestrating disasters. The road at this particular crossroads is narrow, barely wide enough for one cart. Someone has to give way, and both parties consist of men who aren't particularly good at backing down. It's like two people approaching a narrow hallway from opposite ends, except one of them is prophesied to kill the other, and neither knows it yet. "Make way for your betters, boy," shouts the herald, employing the kind of customer service tone that would get you fired from any modern establishment. You can feel Oedipus's hackles rising. He spent his entire life believing he was a peasant's son, but he's always carried himself like nobility, and something in his blood rebels against being ordered around by strangers. It's that particular kind of pride that's half entitlement and half genuine self-respect, mixed with the hot temper that apparently runs in the royal family like a genetic curse. "I give way to no one without good reason," Oedipus replies, which is both admirable and catastrophically stupid given the circumstances. What follows is one of those escalating confrontations that starts with dirty looks and ends with someone getting stabbed. It's like road rage, except instead of honking horns, they have swords, and instead of minor traffic violations, they're about to fulfill cosmic prophecies. The herald, displaying the diplomatic skills that made him perfect for royal service, decides to handle this conflict by trying to force Oedipus off the road physically. Laius, rather than de-escalating like a sensible monarch, decides to personally join the altercation, because apparently good judgment isn't hereditary in the royal line of Thebes. "Move aside, you insolent whelp." Laius bellows, raising his staff to strike the young man who is, unknown to either of them, his own son. And that's when Oedipus's temper finally snaps like a rubber band that's been stretched too far. In a moment of rage that will echo through eternity, he grabs his staff and strikes back. It's one of those split-second decisions that seem perfectly reasonable in the moment, but will haunt you for the rest of your considerably shortened life. The blow catches Laius perfectly, and the king tumbles from his chariot like a sack of grain. The sound his head makes when it hits the rocky ground is the sound of prophecy fulfilling itself with a cosmic thud that reverberates through the very foundations of fate. Chapter 5. The terror of Thebes. You're now witnessing the aftermath of the world's most tragically ironic case of road rage. as Oedipus stands over the bodies of the royal party, breathing heavily and probably wondering how a simple argument about traffic etiquette escalated into multiple homicide. The dust is settling, both literally and figuratively, and you can feel the weight of cosmic wheels clicking into place like the world's most sinister combination lock. Oedipus looks down at what he's done with the kind of shock that comes from realizing you've just crossed a line you didn't even know existed. In his mind, he was defending himself against aggressive strangers who tried to bully him off the road. He has no idea he's just killed his own father and fulfilled the first half of the most famous prophecy in Greek literature. It's like accidentally triggering a nuclear weapon while trying to fix a broken toaster. The scale of unintended consequences is staggering. "What have I done?" he whispers, and you can taste the metallic fear in the air as the reality of his actions begins to sink in. The young man who moments ago was confident in his ability to outsmart fate is now staring at the evidence that fate might be playing a much deeper game than he realized. He's killed multiple people in what felt like self-defense, but the aftermath is starting to feel less like justice and more like cosmic setup. It's the moment when you realize the chess game you thought you were winning was actually being played by someone with infinitely more experience in strategic thinking. Panic sets in like ice water in his veins. Oedipus quickly searches the bodies for anything valuable, not out of greed, but because in ancient Greece, leaving evidence of your crimes lying around was like posting a confession on social media. He takes what he can carry and pushes the bodies off the road, trying to make it look like a robbery gone wrong rather than a prophetic patricide. The cosmic irony is almost too perfect. Oedipus is literally trying to cover up the murder of his father while believing he's protecting his father by staying away from him. It's like accidentally deleting the very files you were trying to back up while congratulating yourself on your data security practices. As he flees the scene, you can feel his mind racing through justifications and explanations. This was self-defense. They attacked first. He had no choice. These are the mental gymnastics of someone trying to process an action that felt necessary in the moment, but now seems to have consequences far beyond what he intended. It's the psychological equivalent of stepping on what you think is solid ground and discovering it's actually quicksand. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn, because apparently the universe wasn't done messing with Thebes. While Oedipus is running from his crime scene, having an existential crisis about justified homicide, a much more pressing problem is terrorizing the main roads leading to the city. You're now approaching the outskirts of Thebes, and the first thing you notice is how eerily quiet the usually busy trade routes have become. Where there should be merchants, pilgrims, and travelers, there's nothing but an oppressive silence broken only by the wind whistling through abandoned camps and overturned carts. It's like stumbling into a zombie apocalypse movie, except instead of undead, the problem is one very much alive monster with a serious attitude problem. Enter the Sphinx, a creature that makes modern urban legends look like bedtime stories for particularly brave children. Picture this: the body of a lion, because apparently regular intimidation wasn't enough, combined with the wings of an eagle for aerial superiority, and the head and torso of a woman, because the Greeks believed that intellectual cruelty was the feminine touch that really completed a monster's aesthetic. This isn't just any random mythological creature causing generic mayhem. The Sphinx is like a serial killer with a philosophy degree and a taste for intellectual superiority. She doesn't just eat people, she psychologically tortures them first with riddles, turning murder into a sadistic game show where the consolation prize for losing is being devoured alive. You can feel the terror, that has settled over the region like a toxic fog. Trade routes that once bustled with commerce are now ghost towns of abandoned merchandise and bleached bones. The Sphinx has positioned herself at a strategic crossroads, because apparently the Greeks believed that all the important dramatic moments in life happen at intersections, and turned what should be a simple journey into a deadly game of 20 questions. Her hunting method is as elegant as it is horrifying. She doesn't attack immediately like a normal predator. Instead, she allows travelers to approach, probably letting them think they're safe until the last moment. Then she poses her riddle, watching with those disturbingly intelligent eyes as her victims realize they're not just facing a monster, but a monster with an IQ that could qualify her for Mensa membership. "Nobody passes without first solving my riddle," she announces to each new victim, her voice carrying that particular mix of beauty and menace that makes your skin crawl and your brain short-circuit simultaneously. The riddle itself has become legendary throughout the region, whispered in taverns and markets like a cursed phone number that nobody wants to call but everybody knows. Those who've witnessed her encounters from a distance and live to tell about it describe a creature that seems to take genuine pleasure in the intellectual superiority she holds over her victims. What makes the Sphinx particularly terrifying isn't just her physical power, but her psychological warfare. She gives people hope. She makes them think they might be smart enough, clever enough, wise enough to solve her puzzle and walk away alive. It's the cruelest kind of murder, death by false hope, followed by the crushing realization that you're about to become lunch for failing a pop quiz. The roads leading to Thebes have become a graveyard of the confident and the foolhardy. Merchants who thought their worldly experience would help them, scholars who believed their education was sufficient, warriors who assumed they could fight their way out if words failed, all of them now nothing but scattered bones and cautionary tales. You can see the remnants of their attempts everywhere. Personal belongings dropped in panic, weapons abandoned when their owners realized that swords are useless against riddles, messages scratched into rocks by desperate people trying to leave clues for future travelers. It's like a prehistoric version of leaving negative Yelp reviews, except instead of complaining about slow service, they're warning about imminent death. The psychological impact on Thebes itself is devastating. The city is slowly starving as trade routes dry up and supplies dwindle. People are trapped in their own city, afraid to venture out, but running out of resources to survive. It's like being under siege by an enemy that doesn't want to conquer you. It just wants to watch you die slowly while playing mind games. Queen Jocasta, ruling in the absence of her mysteriously missing husband, who is currently decomposing on a road somewhere, faces a crisis that would challenge any leader. Her people are terrified, her economy is collapsing, and there's a monster outside the city gates, turning travel into a lethal game show. It's like being a mayor during a natural disaster, except the disaster has a riddle-based agenda and an appetite for human flesh. In desperation, she makes an announcement that will change everything. Whoever can defeat the Sphinx and free Thebes from this terror will be rewarded with the crown and her hand in marriage. It's the ancient equivalent of posting a job listing with incredible benefits, not knowing that the most qualified applicant is currently having a mental breakdown on the highway after committing accidental patricide. The stage is now set for one of mythology's most famous confrontations, where intelligence will triumph over brute force, and a young man's greatest talent will save a city while simultaneously completing his own destruction. Chapter 6. The Deadly Riddle. You're now standing at the infamous crossroads, where the Sphinx has made her hunting ground, and the atmosphere is thick with an otherworldly tension that makes your skin crawl. The bones scattered around the area aren't just decorative. They're a testament to the intellectual arrogance of dozens of travelers who thought they were smarter than a creature that's been perfecting her riddle-based murder technique for years. The Sphinx herself is a sight that would make modern special effects artists weep with envy. Imagine the most majestic lion you've ever seen, but scaled up to the size of a small building, with wings that could create their own weather system when she spreads them. Then add the torso and head of a woman, so beautiful that your brain temporarily forgets she's about to either spare your life or turn you into a midnight snack based on your performance in what amounts to a deadly pop quiz. But it's her eyes that truly unnerve you. They hold an intelligence that seems ancient and calculating, like she's not just looking at potential victims but studying them, analyzing their weaknesses, savoring the moment when confidence transforms into terror. She's not just a monster, she's a connoisseur of human failure, and business has been very, very good. The riddle that has stumped countless travelers isn't just a random brain teaser. It's been carefully crafted to exploit the way humans think, to trap them in the very logic they believe will save them. Those who've heard it whispered in taverns describe it as deceptively simple. The kind of question that makes you think you know the answer, until you really consider what's being asked. Which creature walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? She asks each victim, her voice carrying the musical quality that makes you want to lean closer, even as every survival instinct screams at you to run. What makes this riddle particularly diabolical is its elegance. It's not some impossible mathematical equation or obscure mythological reference that only scholars would know. It's a question about something universal, something every human should understand intimately. Yet somehow, faced with those piercing eyes and the knowledge that their life hangs on their answer, even the wisest travelers find their minds going blank. You can almost feel the psychological pressure that builds as victims realize they're not just answering a question, they're performing in a one-person show where the audience is a monster and the reviews are literally life or death. It's like being asked to solve a puzzle while someone holds a loaded gun to your head, except the gun has wings and has been known to eat people who give wrong answers. The Sphinx doesn't rush her victims. She seems to enjoy watching them think, probably savoring the moment when hope begins to transform into desperation. Some travelers try to bargain with her, offering gold or promising future favors. Others attempt to answer with questions of their own, hoping to turn the tables on her intellectual game. But the Sphinx has heard every possible variation of human cleverness, and she's yet to be impressed. What's particularly cruel about her method is that she gives people just enough time to convince themselves they might have figured it out. You can imagine the thought process: wait, this sounds familiar. I think I heard something like this before. Maybe if I think about it from a different angle. And then, the growing panic as seconds tick by and certainty dissolves into confusion. The bones around her lair tell the story of human intellectual pride meeting cosmic indifference. Here lies a merchant who thought his years of negotiating trade deals had made him wise enough to outwit a monster. There, the remains of a scholar who believed his extensive education in rhetoric would serve him in this ultimate debate. Over there, a warrior who discovered too late that courage and sword-fighting skills are remarkably useless when faced with a riddle. But perhaps the most tragic victims are those who came so close to the right answer that you can almost see their ghosts still wrestling with the problem. These are the people who understood part of the riddle, who grasped elements of what was being asked, but couldn't quite make the final leap to the complete solution. They're like students who knew the material, but choked on the final exam, except the consequences were slightly more permanent than a failing grade. The Sphinx has become more than just a monster. She's a force of nature that has fundamentally changed how people think about travel and trade in the region. Merchant routes that have existed for generations have been abandoned. Families have been separated because visiting relatives has become a potentially fatal intellectual exercise. The economy of Thebes is slowly bleeding to death, one failed riddle at a time. What makes this situation even more maddening for the people of Thebes is that they know the solution exists. The Sphinx isn't asking an impossible question. She's asking something that has an answer. Someone, somewhere, has the knowledge and insight to solve her riddle and break this cycle of terror. But finding that person before the city starves or falls into complete chaos is becoming increasingly desperate. You can sense the growing desperation in the very air around Thebes. This isn't just about one monster causing problems. It's about an entire civilization being held hostage by a single question. Imagine if all of modern internet commerce shut down because no one could figure out a particularly tricky captcha. That's roughly the economic impact the Sphinx is having on ancient Greek trade. The psychological warfare extends beyond just the riddle itself. The Sphinx has positioned herself at a location where she can be seen from the city walls, a constant reminder of the intellectual challenge that stands between Thebes and the outside world. She's like a giant, winged billboard advertising the fact that human intelligence has met its match. And the advertising campaign is written in the bones of those who tried and failed. Some of the more creative minds in Thebes have attempted to find workarounds. There have been schemes to sneak past her at night. She apparently doesn't sleep. Attempts to distract her with offerings. She's not interested in bribes. And even plans to simply attack her with overwhelming force. Turns out wings and cosmic intelligence make for excellent defensive capabilities. But the Sphinx isn't just physically formidable. She represents something deeper and more unsettling about the nature of knowledge itself. She's proof that intelligence can be weaponized, that wisdom can become a tool of destruction, and that sometimes the most dangerous monsters are the ones that force you to think rather than fight. The riddle hanging in the air isn't just a question, it's a judgment on human intellectual capability. Every day it remains unsolved. It seems to mock the entire concept of human wisdom. How can a species that considers itself the pinnacle of creation be stumped by a single question? How can beings who have built cities, developed agriculture, and created art be reduced to food by a creature asking about something as fundamental as walking? And yet, somewhere in the back of your mind as a dream traveler, you can sense that the answer is closer than anyone realizes. The solution isn't hidden in some obscure corner of esoteric knowledge. It's sitting right in front of everyone, so obvious that it's become invisible. Sometimes the hardest riddles to solve are the ones where the answer is literally staring you in the face. But you're looking so hard for complexity that you miss the beautiful simplicity of truth. The stage is set for a confrontation that will either save Thebes or add one more pile of bones to the Sphinx's collection. And somewhere on the road, a young man carrying the weight of recent violence and ancient prophecy is about to discover whether his greatest talent is intelligence or simply being in the right place at the right time with the right perspective. Chapter 7. The epic confrontation. You're now witnessing the approach of Oedipus toward the Sphinx's domain, and you can feel the cosmic gears of destiny clicking into their final positions, like a lock that's been waiting centuries to open. The young man walking toward almost certain death doesn't know he's about to become either the greatest hero in Theban history or just another addition to the monster's bone collection. Oedipus arrives at the crossroads, still carrying the psychological weight of his recent violence, his mind churning with guilt, confusion, and a growing sense that his life has somehow spiraled completely out of his control. He's like someone who started the day thinking they were going to the grocery store and somehow ended up auditioning for a reality show where the elimination process involves being eaten alive. When he first sees the Sphinx, you can feel his shock mixing with a strange kind of relief. Here, finally, is a problem he can understand. Not mysterious prophecies about patricide and incest, not confusing revelations about his parentage, but a straightforward challenge: solve a riddle or die. It's like finally encountering a multiple-choice question after a day of essay exams written in a foreign language. I've read the proclamation in Thebes. Oedipus calls out, his voice carrying a confidence that surprises even him. I'm here to face your challenge. The Sphinx regards him with those ancient, intelligent eyes, and you can sense her interest peaking. This isn't just another terrified traveler stumbling into her web. This is someone who has actively sought her out. It's like the difference between catching a random fish and having a particularly impressive salmon deliberately swim upstream to your dining table. Another young fool seeking glory, she purrs, her voice containing harmonics that seem to vibrate in your bones. Do you know how many have stood where you stand now, convinced they were cleverer than those who came before? What she doesn't know, and what Oedipus himself doesn't fully realize, is that he's not approaching this challenge the way previous victims did. They came seeking to prove their intelligence, to demonstrate their superiority over a monster. Oedipus comes burdened with recent trauma and a desperate need for something in his life to make sense. He's not trying to outsmart the Sphinx. He's trying to understand something, anything, in a world that has recently revealed itself to be far more complex and dangerous than he ever imagined. You can see the scattered remains of previous challenges around the area, and Oedipus notices them too. But instead of being intimidated, he seems almost curious about them. There's something in his examination of the bones that suggests he's not just seeing failure, he's seeing data, trying to understand what these people might have been thinking, where their logic might have led them astray. "Tell me your riddle," he says simply, and there's something in his tone that catches the Sphinx off guard. No bravado, no attempts at intimidation or bargaining. Just a straightforward request from someone who genuinely wants to understand the question being asked. The Sphinx spreads her magnificent wings, and you can feel the air displacement as she positions herself for what she clearly expects to be another routine intellectual execution. The afternoon sun catches the golden highlights in her lion's mane and makes her human features seem even more unnaturally beautiful. She's like a work of art that happens to specialize in murder. "Very well," she says, her voice taking on the ceremonial tone she uses for her deadly game. "Answer me this. What creature walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening?" The silence that follows isn't the panicked quiet of someone desperately searching for an answer they don't know. Instead, you can feel Oedipus processing the question with a kind of methodical calm that's almost unsettling. He's not racing through possible answers or trying to impress anyone with complex reasoning. He's simply thinking about what's being asked. What happens next in Oedipus's mind is something beautiful in its simplicity. While previous victims got trapped trying to think of exotic creatures or magical beings that might fit the description, Oedipus does something revolutionary. He thinks about ordinary life, not mythology, not ancient wisdom, not clever wordplay, just the basic experience of being human. You can almost see the moment when understanding dawns on his face. It's not the expression of someone solving a complex puzzle, but rather the look of someone recognizing something they've known all along, but never thought to articulate. It's like finally remembering where you put your keys after searching everywhere, only to discover they were in your hand the entire time. "The answer is man," he says, and his voice carries a quiet certainty that makes the Sphinx's confident posture falter slightly. As a baby, he crawls on hands and knees, 4 legs. As an adult, he walks upright on 2 legs. And in old age, he uses a cane as a 3rd leg to support himself. The silence that follows is different from any that has come before in this place. It's not the silence of contemplation or the pause before death. It's the silence of an entire cosmic arrangement suddenly shifting, like tectonic plates readjusting after an earthquake. You can feel something fundamental changing in the very fabric of reality around this crossroads. The Sphinx's reaction is immediate and devastating. Her beautiful face contorts with an emotion that seems part rage, part shame, and part something that might be relief. For years she has been the arbiter of this deadly game, confident in her intellectual superiority over the mortals who dared to challenge her. But now, faced with an answer so simple and obvious that she cannot deny its correctness, her entire identity as an unsolvable puzzle crumbles like ancient parchment. "No," she whispers, but even as she speaks, you can see that she knows the truth. The answer is correct, devastatingly and undeniably correct. Her reign of terror based on intellectual superiority has been ended by someone who approached her riddle, not as a contest to be won, but as a question to be understood. What follows is one of the most dramatic exits in mythological history. The Sphinx, unable to bear the shame of being defeated at her own game, or perhaps simply unable to exist in a world where her riddle has been solved, lets out a cry that seems to contain all the frustrated intelligence and wounded pride of someone whose life's work has just been revealed to be based on a question that any thoughtful person could answer. She spreads her wings one final time, not in display of power, but in preparation for flight, not away from this place, but toward a destination from which there is no return. With a shriek that echoes off the surrounding hills like the sound of destiny itself breaking, she hurls herself from the rocky precipice where she has held court for so long. The impact echoes through the valley like cosmic punctuation marking the end of an era. The Sphinx, the terror of Thebes, the intellectual predator who turned travel into a lethal game show, is no more. And standing in the sudden quiet, Oedipus looks around at a world that has just become significantly safer, but somehow no less mysterious. He has saved a city with his intelligence, but he doesn't yet understand that this triumph is just another step in a cosmic dance that will eventually bring him face to face with the very fate he's been trying to avoid. Chapter 8. The answer that changed everything. You're now standing in the aftermath of one of mythology's most famous intellectual victories, watching as the dust, literally and figuratively, settles around the broken body of the Sphinx. The silence that follows her death is profound, not just the absence of sound, but the absence of the supernatural tension that has gripped this region for so long. It's like the moment when a fever finally breaks, leaving behind a peaceful exhaustion that feels almost sacred. Oedipus stands amid the scattered bones of previous victims, and you can see him processing what has just happened. He came here seeking some kind of resolution to the chaos his life has become, and instead he stumbled into becoming the hero of Thebes. It's like applying for an entry-level position and accidentally becoming CEO through a series of unexpected circumstances. The beauty of his solution wasn't in its complexity, but in its humanity. While scholars and merchants and warriors had approached the Sphinx's riddle as an intellectual challenge to be conquered, Oedipus simply thought about what it means to be human. He didn't try to outsmart the riddle, he understood it. There's a profound difference between solving a puzzle and recognizing a truth, and somehow, in his moment of greatest need, Oedipus managed the latter. Word of the Sphinx's defeat spreads through the region faster than wildfire in a drought. You can almost feel the collective sigh of relief rising from Thebes as news arrives that their nightmare is finally over. Trade routes that have been abandoned for months will reopen. Families separated by the monster's reign of terror can reunite. The economy can begin to recover from what amounts to an intellectual blockade that has been strangling the city. But for Oedipus himself, this victory feels strangely hollow. Yes, he saved countless lives and freed an entire city from terror. But he's also just demonstrated that he possesses exactly the kind of intelligence that could make prophecies about his future uncomfortably plausible. If he's smart enough to solve the Sphinx's riddle, when dozens of others failed, what else might he be capable of? What other cosmic jokes might be waiting for him down the road? As he makes his way toward Thebes, you can sense a growing awareness in him that his life has taken on a momentum of its own. He's no longer just a confused young man fleeing from disturbing prophecies. He's become a figure of destiny, someone whose actions have consequences that ripple outward in ways he can't predict or control. It's like realizing you're no longer a background character in your own story, but you're not sure if you're the hero or the tragic protagonist. The approach to Thebes itself is triumphant in a way that makes Oedipus deeply uncomfortable. People line the roads, cheering and throwing flowers, treating him like a conquering hero when he feels more like someone who stumbled into the right answer through luck, rather than wisdom. It's the ancient equivalent of going viral for something you're not entirely sure you deserve credit for. Queen Jocasta awaits him at the palace gates, and when Oedipus first sees her, you can feel something shift in the cosmic atmosphere around them. She's beautiful in the way that royal women are supposed to be, but there's also something indefinably familiar about her that neither of them can quite place. It's like meeting someone and being certain you've seen them before, but unable to remember where or when. You have freed our city from a terror that seemed unsolvable, Jocasta says, her voice carrying genuine gratitude, mixed with something that might be relief. The least we can do is honor our promise. The promise, of course, is marriage to the queen and the throne of Thebes. What should be the ultimate reward, becoming king of a prosperous city and marrying a beautiful, intelligent woman, feels to Oedipus like another step in a dance whose choreography he doesn't understand. He's like someone accepting a job offer that seems too good to be true, because in his experience, things that seem too good to be true usually are. But what choice does he have? He's a young man with no family he knows of, no kingdom to return to, and no clear path forward except the one that's being offered to him. The alternative is to refuse the greatest honor Thebes can bestow and wander off into uncertainty, carrying the weight of recent violence and cosmic prophecies. When you put it that way, marrying the queen and becoming king seems like the only rational choice. The wedding ceremony is magnificent, but you can sense an underlying current of cosmic irony running through the festivities like a dark river beneath a beautiful bridge. The people of Thebes celebrate their salvation and the beginning of what they hope will be a golden age under their new king. Oedipus and Jocasta exchange vows with genuine affection and respect. Two people who have found in each other exactly what they needed at this moment in their lives. What makes this moment particularly poignant is how right it feels to everyone involved. Oedipus has proven his intelligence and courage. Jocasta has found a king who seems both capable and genuinely decent. The people have a ruler who has already demonstrated his ability to solve seemingly impossible problems. If you didn't know the backstory, this would look like the beginning of a fairy tale rather than the setup for one of history's greatest tragedies. As the celebrations wind down and the new royal couple retires to their chambers, you can feel the threads of fate tightening around them like silk that becomes stronger the more you struggle against it. They're two people who believe they've found happiness and security, unaware that they're actually playing roles in a cosmic drama that was written before either of them was born. The kingdom settles into a period of prosperity that feels almost surreal after the terror of the Sphinx's reign. Trade resumes, the economy recovers, and Thebes begins to flourish under Oedipus's intelligent and fair rule. He proves to be exactly the kind of king the city needed: thoughtful, decisive, and genuinely concerned with the welfare of his people. It's like watching someone excel at a job they never applied for but turn out to be naturally gifted at performing. But even in these golden moments, there are hints that all is not as perfect as it appears. Oedipus sometimes wakes from dreams he can't quite remember, filled with a vague sense of unease that he can't explain. Jocasta occasionally looks at her new husband with an expression of puzzlement, as if trying to solve a riddle of her own. The people of Thebes whisper, sometimes about the mysterious disappearance of their previous king, Laius, who left for Delphi and never returned. These are small shadows on an otherwise bright picture, but in Greek tragedy, small shadows have a way of growing until they consume everything in darkness. The answer that saved Thebes and made Oedipus king was perfect in its simplicity and truth. But truth, as he's about to discover, has a way of revealing itself in layers, and sometimes the deeper you dig, the more you wish you had stopped at the surface. The man who solved the riddle of human existence is about to face the much more complex puzzle of his own identity, and this time, the answer won't bring freedom. It will bring a reckoning that will echo through the ages. Chapter 9. The Bitter Victory. You find yourself now in the golden years of Oedipus's reign, watching as Thebes flourishes under his wise rule, yet sensing beneath the prosperity a current of unease that flows like an underground river, invisible but persistent. The man who solved the riddle of the ages has become a king beloved by his people, a husband cherished by his wife, and a father to children who carry within them the complex legacy of bloodlines they cannot comprehend. Time moves differently in the realm of myth, flowing like honey in sunlight, thick with consequence and meaning. Years pass in Thebes like chapters in a book written by fate itself, each season bringing prosperity, each harvest confirming that the kingdom has indeed been blessed by the gods. Or so it seems to those who measure success in grain stores and gold, who count blessings in the laughter of children and the contentment of citizens. Oedipus has proven himself a ruler of remarkable wisdom and compassion. He listens to his people's concerns with genuine interest, resolves disputes with fairness that even his opponents respect, and makes decisions that consistently serve the greater good, rather than his own interests. He is, by any measure that mortals use to judge their leaders, a king worthy of legend. Yet there are moments, quiet moments in the depth of night, or the stillness before dawn, when he stares into darkness and feels the weight of questions he cannot answer pressing against his consciousness, like stones against a dam. Jocasta has given him 4 children, 2 sons, Eteocles and Polynices, and 2 daughters, Antigone and Ismene. You can observe their family life with the bittersweet knowledge of what none of them understand, that these children are simultaneously his offspring and his siblings, products of a union that defies the natural order while appearing perfectly normal and loving on its surface. There is something both beautiful and heartbreaking in watching Oedipus play with his children, teaching them the lessons of kingship and life, unaware that he is both their father and their brother, that every gesture of paternal love is also a testament to cosmic irony. The children themselves grow strong and intelligent, carrying within their veins the complex inheritance of royal blood that has been twisted into patterns their young minds could never comprehend. Antigone, in particular, shows signs of the same piercing intelligence that allowed her father to solve the Sphinx's riddle, a clarity of thought that will one day lead her to make choices that echo through eternity. But for now, she is simply a child learning to read and laugh and question the world around her with the innocent curiosity that makes childhood sacred. Yet even in these golden years, there are signs that all is not as harmonious as it appears. Oedipus sometimes wakes in the deep hours of night with fragments of dreams he cannot quite remember, visions that leave him feeling unsettled in ways he cannot name. These dreams seem to whisper of connections just beyond his understanding, of truths that hover at the edge of consciousness like words spoken in a language he almost but not quite comprehends. Jocasta, too, carries within her a growing awareness that something in their happiness feels incomplete, as if they are living in a beautiful painting that lacks some essential detail. She watches her husband sometimes with a puzzled expression, as if trying to solve a riddle of her own. There are moments when his gestures, his way of moving, even the pattern of his breathing in sleep, seem familiar in ways that extend beyond their years together. It is the kind of recognition that lives in the body rather than the mind, a knowing that exists below the level of conscious thought. The kingdom prospers, but prosperity itself begins to feel fragile, like a soap bubble that becomes more beautiful and more delicate the larger it grows. Trade flourishes along roads that were once death traps, but merchants speak in whispers of strange omens and peculiar dreams. The harvest yields abundant grain, yet farmers notice that certain fields seem blessed while others, for no reason they can understand, produce crops that taste of sadness. It is during this time of seeming abundance that the first whispers begin to circulate about the fate of the previous king, Laius. His disappearance, once overshadowed by the terror of the Sphinx and the joy of liberation, begins to resurface in conversations. People wonder aloud what became of their former ruler, whether he met some terrible fate on the road to Delphi, whether his body lies unburied somewhere, crying out for justice from the earth itself. These whispers reach Oedipus like echoes of a conversation happening in another room, distinct enough to be unsettling but not clear enough to be understood. He finds himself thinking about the man he killed on the road years ago, remembering the weight of the staff in his hand, the sound of impact, the way the older man's eyes had widened in surprise before the light left them forever. What had seemed like justified self-defense in the heat of the moment now carries a weight that grows heavier with time. The memory of that confrontation has transformed in his mind from a clear narrative of self-defense into something more complex and troubling. Had the older man really been trying to attack him, or had there been something else in his expression? Had there been a moment of recognition, a flash of something that Oedipus had been too angry to notice? These questions circle through his thoughts like vultures, patient and persistent, waiting for the moment when they will finally be acknowledged. Jocasta notices her husband's growing preoccupation, the way his attention sometimes drifts during conversations, how he stares into fires as if searching for answers in the dancing flames. She asks him gentle questions about his concerns, offers the comfort of her presence and understanding, but she can sense that whatever troubles him exists in a realm beyond her reach, a place where even love cannot penetrate. The truth hovers around them like morning mist, present but not yet substantial enough to grasp. It exists in the spaces between their conversations, in the pause before laughter, in the moment of silence that sometimes falls when they look at each other across the dinner table. They are living in the eye of a storm that has not yet broken, enjoying the deceptive calm that comes before the cosmic winds begin to blow. In quiet moments, when you observe this family and their domestic happiness, There is something almost sacred about their unknowing. They love each other with genuine depth and tenderness, create moments of joy and connection that would be beautiful in any context. Yet beneath this love lies a truth so devastating that its revelation will transform every memory, every shared glance, every gentle touch into something that will haunt them through eternity. The golden years are ending, though none of them know it yet. The questions that have been circling at the edges of consciousness are about to move toward the center, and the man who solved the riddle of human existence is about to face the much more complex puzzle of his own identity. Chapter 10. The Truth Revealed. You are now witnessing the beginning of the end, as if standing at the edge of an emotional precipice from which there can be no return. The prosperity of Thebes, which has seemed so solid and enduring, begins to show cracks, like a beautiful vase that has been struck by an invisible hammer. A plague descends upon the city, not the quick, merciful kind that claims lives swiftly, but a slow, creeping pestilence that seems to drain the very life force from everything it touches. The plague is unlike anything the people of Thebes have experienced before. Crops wither in fields that should be green and abundant. Livestock sicken and die despite the careful attention of their keepers. Children are born weak and struggle to thrive, as if the very air of the kingdom has become toxic to new life. It is the kind of suffering that goes beyond physical symptoms, reaching into the spiritual realm, where hope itself begins to fade like light at the end of a long day. Oedipus, as king, feels the weight of his people's suffering, as if each death, each failed harvest, each cry of despair were a stone added to his own burden. This is not merely the challenge of leadership, it is something deeper and more personal, a sense that the plague is somehow connected to him in ways he cannot yet understand. The man who once saved the city by solving a riddle now faces a crisis that cannot be resolved through cleverness or intelligence alone. In desperation, he sends messengers to Delphi, seeking guidance from the oracle that has already shaped his life in ways he does not comprehend. The response comes back like an echo from his past, carrying with it the weight of divine judgment and cosmic balance. The plague will end only when the murderer of King Laius is found and expelled from Thebes. These words fall upon Oedipus like stones into still water, creating ripples that spread outward into every corner of his consciousness. The murderer of Laius must be found. Someone in his kingdom, someone who has been living among them, sharing their prosperity, is responsible for the curse that now destroys everything they have built together. The hunt for this criminal becomes his obsession, driven by a desire for justice that burns within him like a flame that cannot be extinguished. What follows is an investigation that becomes increasingly surreal, as if Oedipus were a detective pursuing a criminal who always seems to be one step ahead, leaving clues that point in directions he does not want to explore. Witnesses are questioned, stories are compared, timelines are constructed, and slowly, inexorably, the evidence begins to point toward a truth so terrible that his mind rejects it, even as his intelligence acknowledges its inevitability. The prophet Tiresias arrives at the palace like a messenger from another realm, his blind eyes seeing truths that those with sight cannot perceive. When Oedipus demands that he reveal what he knows about Laius's murder, the old man's reluctance is palpable, as if he understands that some knowledge, once spoken, can never be taken back, that some truths are too devastating to survive intact. "I beg you," King Oedipus Tiresias says, his voice carrying the weight of centuries, "do not force me to speak what should remain hidden. Some stones are better left unturned. some doors better left unopened. But Oedipus, driven by the same intelligence that solved the Sphinx's riddle, cannot accept evasion when his people are dying. He presses the prophet with increasing urgency, demanding answers, threatening consequences, using all the authority of his position to force revelation. It is like watching someone methodically dismantle the foundation of their own house, stone by stone, unable to stop even as they recognize that the structure will collapse. When Tiresias finally speaks, his words fall like hammer blows against the anvil of destiny. You yourself are the murderer you seek. You killed King Laius, your own father, and married Queen Jocasta, your own mother. The silence that follows is unlike any silence you have experienced. It is not merely the absence of sound, but the absence of possibility itself, as if the universe has paused to allow the weight of this revelation to settle into every corner of existence. Oedipus stands frozen, his mind struggling to process information that seems to violate the basic laws of reality, while Jocasta's face transforms through a series of expressions that chronicle the death of innocence and the birth of unthinkable knowledge. The evidence, once viewed through the lens of this terrible truth, becomes undeniable. The timing of Laius's disappearance matches exactly with Oedipus's encounter on the road. The description of the king matches the man Oedipus killed in what he believed was self-defense. The details that once seemed like mere coincidence now reveal themselves as the careful orchestration of fate itself. A divine comedy so perfectly constructed that every attempt to avoid it only served to ensure its completion. Jocasta's reaction unfolds like a flower blooming in reverse, beauty turning to horror as understanding takes root in her consciousness. She realizes that the man she has loved, the father of her children, the king who has brought prosperity to their realm, is also the son she gave away to die, the child whose fate she has mourned in secret corners of her heart for years. The recognition comes not as a sudden shock, but as a terrible confirmation of something her heart had been trying to tell her, a whispered truth that her mind had refused to acknowledge. The psychological devastation is immediate and complete. Every memory of their life together becomes transformed, every moment of tenderness twisted into something that feels simultaneously sacred and profane. Their love, which has been genuine and deep, does not disappear but becomes something that cannot be contained within normal categories of human experience. They have loved each other as husband and wife, as mother and son, as two souls who found in each other exactly what they needed. And the revelation of their true relationship makes their connection both more profound and more impossible than any love story ever told. Jocasta flees to her chambers like someone seeking sanctuary in a place where divine law cannot reach. But there is no refuge from truth once it has been spoken. The queen who has ruled with wisdom and grace, who has been wife and mother and sovereign, finds herself trapped in a web of identity that offers no escape except the one that requires leaving the world entirely. Oedipus remains in the great hall, surrounded by the trappings of power that suddenly seem meaningless, trying to comprehend how the man who solved the riddle of human existence could have lived his entire adult life blind to the truth of his own story. The irony is so complete it becomes almost beautiful in its terrible perfection. The king renowned for his insight has been the most blind man in his kingdom. The solver of riddles has been living inside the greatest riddle of all without recognizing it. The truth spreads through the palace like spilled wine through fabric, staining everything it touches, transforming the golden years of prosperity into a time that now seems like a fever dream, beautiful but ultimately false. The children they have raised together are simultaneously their offspring and his siblings, products of a love that transcends normal categories, while violating the most fundamental taboos of human society. Final reflection. The deepest riddle as you witness the final chapter of this ancient tragedy. You find yourself contemplating the profound mysteries that lie at the heart of human existence itself. The story of Oedipus is not merely a tale of one man's catastrophic discovery of his own identity. It is a meditation on the nature of knowledge, the limits of human understanding, and the complex relationship between fate and free will that governs every moment of our lives. In the quiet that follows revelation, there is a strange peace that settles over the ruins of what once seemed like perfect happiness. Jocasta, unable to bear the weight of truth, has chosen the final escape, hanging herself with the golden cords that once adorned her royal garments. Oedipus, discovering her body, performs the act that will define him for eternity. He takes the pins from her dress and drives them into his own eyes, choosing blindness in a world where sight has brought only unbearable knowledge. If I could not see the truth when I had eyes, he cries, blood streaming down his face like tears of another kind, then let me be blind to all horrors that remain. There is something almost sacred in this moment of self-inflicted darkness, as if Oedipus has finally found a way to make his external condition match his internal reality. He has always been blind to the most important truths about his life. Now his blindness becomes visible, honest, a physical manifestation of the human condition itself. We are all, in our way, blind to the deeper meanings of our existence, stumbling through life thinking we understand our story, when we are actually characters in a much larger narrative, whose patterns we cannot perceive. His children, Antigone and Ismene, Eteocles and Polynices, become both his offspring and his siblings inheritors of a bloodline so complex that it defies conventional understanding. Antigone, in particular, will grow to embody the same fierce intelligence and moral clarity that characterized her father, using these gifts to challenge the very foundations of human law in service of a higher truth. In her story, we see the continuation of the themes that define Oedipus: the conflict between human law and divine law, the price of integrity in a world that demands compromise, the courage required to see clearly when clarity brings suffering. The banishment of Oedipus from Thebes becomes not merely a punishment but a kind of pilgrimage, a journey into the deeper mysteries of existence that can only be undertaken by those who have lost everything except their humanity. Guided by Antigone, who chooses love over comfort, wisdom over safety, he wanders the roads of Greece as a living reminder that our greatest triumphs and our most devastating failures often spring from the same source. Our distinctly human capacity to seek truth, even when that truth destroys us. But perhaps the most profound aspect of this ancient story lies not in its tragic conclusion, but in the riddle that started it all. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? The answer, humanity itself, reveals something beautiful about our condition. We are creatures defined by change, by transformation, by the passage through different stages of being that require different kinds of support, different ways of moving through the world. In infancy, we crawl, dependent on others for our survival, vulnerable and trusting. In adulthood, we stand upright, carrying ourselves through the world with the confidence that comes from strength and knowledge. In old age, we lean on canes, on the wisdom of experience, on the support of those who love us enough to help us navigate a world that has become more challenging than it once was. The riddle is not merely about physical locomotion. It is about the human journey itself, the way we grow and change and adapt throughout our lives. Oedipus solved this riddle because he understood, on some deep level, what it means to be human. He recognized in the Sphinx's question not a clever puzzle, but a fundamental truth about the nature of existence itself. We are all creatures who change form throughout our lives, who require different kinds of support at different stages, who must learn to adapt to new circumstances while maintaining our essential humanity. The tragedy of his life lies not in his failure to understand the riddle, but in his inability to apply that same insight to his own story. He could see the pattern of human existence clearly when it was presented as an abstract question, but he remained blind to the specific ways that pattern was playing out in his own life. This, perhaps, is the deepest irony of all. We are often most blind to the truths that are closest to home, most unable to see the patterns that govern our own experience. As you drift towards sleep, carrying with you the weight and beauty of this ancient tale, consider how the story of Oedipus continues to resonate across the centuries, because it speaks to something universal in human experience. We are all, in our way, solving riddles about the nature of existence while remaining blind to crucial truths about our own lives. We all carry within us the capacity for both wisdom and blindness, insight and ignorance, triumph and tragedy. The Sphinx, in her way, was offering more than a deadly puzzle. She was presenting a mirror in which humanity could see itself reflected. Those who answered correctly did so, not because they were cleverer than those who failed, but because they were able to recognize their own humanity in the abstract terms of the riddle. Oedipus succeeded where others failed because, in that moment, he was able to see clearly what it means to be human. Perhaps this is the gift that ancient stories offer us, not easy answers or simple moral lessons, but the opportunity to see our own lives reflected in the experiences of others, to recognize in their struggles the same themes that play out in our own existence. We may not face sphinxes or fulfill terrible prophecies, but we all encounter moments when our greatest strengths become the source of our greatest challenges, when the very qualities that define us also limit us. The man who destroyed a millennial monster with a single word ultimately discovered that the most dangerous monsters are often the ones we carry within ourselves, our blind spots, our assumptions, our inability to see the full truth of our own stories. Yet even in its darkness, his tale carries within it a kind of hope. If we can learn to see ourselves clearly, to recognize our own humanity in all its complexity and contradiction, perhaps we can navigate the riddles of our own existence with greater wisdom and compassion. As sleep approaches like a gentle tide, carrying away the weight of consciousness and the burden of too much knowledge, let the story of Oedipus remind you that we are all travelers on a journey whose destination remains mysterious, all solvers of riddles whose deepest meanings we are still learning to understand. In the end, perhaps the greatest riddle is not what it means to be human, but how to be human with grace, courage, and love in a world that offers both extraordinary beauty and unimaginable challenge. The answer to that riddle, like Oedipus's response to the Sphinx, may be simpler than we think. We walk through life on whatever legs we have. We lean on whatever support we can find. And we do our best to see clearly even when the truth is too bright or too dark for comfortable vision. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes that is everything. Rest now, knowing that even the most complex stories ultimately return to the simplest truths, that we are human, that we change, that we endure, and that in our endurance we find not only suffering but also meaning, not only tragedy, but also the quiet triumph of consciousness itself, aware of its own existence, in a universe vast beyond comprehension yet intimate enough to hold the beating of a single heart. Philosophical and modern analysis, Oedipus and the Sphinx. The Paradox of Knowledge in the Information Age Introduction. The Eternal Return of Myth, the story of Oedipus, and the Sphinx transcends its origins in ancient Greece to emerge as one of the most profoundly relevant narratives for our contemporary era. In a world saturated with information, where algorithms determine what we see and know, where artificial intelligence promises to solve riddles that humanity has carried for millennia, the Oedipal myth resonates with a philosophical urgency that few ancient texts manage to maintain. This analysis proposes to examine how the narrative of Oedipus offers a mirror for our modern condition, revealing paradoxes about knowledge, identity, and destiny that manifest in surprisingly contemporary forms. The young man who solves the Sphinx's riddle but remains blind to the truth about himself becomes a perfect metaphor for 21st century humanity, technologically advanced, informationally connected, but frequently alienated from fundamental truths about its own nature and purpose. The Sphinx's riddle, metaphor for the human condition. The nature of true knowledge, the Sphinx's riddle. What creature walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening, represents much more than an intellectual puzzle. It is an interrogation about the fundamental nature of human existence, formulated in a way that exposes the crucial difference between information and wisdom, between technical knowledge and existential understanding. In the digital age, we are constantly bombarded with riddles that seem complex but have technical solutions: how to optimize algorithms, how to process big data, how to automate processes. However, the Sphinx's riddle reminds us that the deepest questions about the human condition often have apparently simple answers that require not computational processing, but genuinely human insight. Oedipus solves the riddle because he can see beyond the surface of the question to recognize a universal truth about human experience. He doesn't need specialized data or esoteric knowledge. He needs only the capacity to recognize his own humanity reflected in the question. This distinction between technical knowledge and existential wisdom is crucial for understanding our era, where information is abundant, but wisdom remains scarce. The artificial intelligence paradox. The figure of the Sphinx acquires new relevance when we consider the development of artificial intelligence. Like the Sphinx, AI presents intellectual challenges that test the limits of human capacity. But while the Sphinx asked about the nature of humanity, AI forces us to question what it means to be human in a world where machines can process information in ways that surpass our cognitive capacity. Oedipus's triumph over the Sphinx suggests that there is something uniquely human in our capacity to understand not just data, but patterns of meaning that emerge from lived experience. When Oedipus answers man, he is not merely providing correct information. He is demonstrating a form of knowledge that arises from the integration of intellect and experience, reason and intuition, analysis and empathy. This integration represents a fundamental challenge for our era: how to maintain and cultivate distinctly human forms of knowledge in a world increasingly dominated by algorithmic data processing. The myth suggests that our advantage lies not in speed or volume of processing, but in the capacity to recognize patterns of meaning that emerge from the complexity of human experience. The blindness of the seer, knowledge and self-knowledge. The modern epistemological paradox. The central tragedy of Oedipus's story lies in the paradox between his capacity to see universal truths and his inability to recognize personal truths. This paradox finds disturbing parallels in our era of extreme specialization, where individuals can possess deep knowledge in specific areas while remaining surprisingly unconscious about fundamental aspects of their own lives and motivations. Consider the phenomenon of the alienated technologist, professionals who create complex systems of communication and connection but struggle with personal relationships. Market behavior specialists who cannot understand their own consumption motivations. Neuroscientists who map the brain but remain mysteries to themselves. The Oedipal pattern repeats, technical competence coexisting with personal blindness. This division reflects a deeper fragmentation in how we organize knowledge in modernity. Specialization, while having produced extraordinary advances, has also created knowledge silos that often prevent the integration necessary for self-knowledge. We know more about the distant universe than about our own psychological processes. We develop sophisticated artificial intelligence, but struggle to understand emotional intelligence. The self-fulfilling prophecy of modernity, the prophecy that haunts Oedipus, that he will kill his father and marry his mother, functions as a powerful metaphor for the self-fulfilling patterns that govern both individual lives and entire societies. In modern psychology, we recognize this phenomenon as self-fulfilling prophecy, beliefs that become true precisely because we believe them. Oedipus tries to avoid his prophesied destiny, but each action he takes to escape it brings him closer to its fulfillment. This pattern manifests in troubling ways in contemporary society. Consider some examples. At the individual level, the person who, fearing rejection, develops defensive behaviors that effectively push others away, confirming their worst fears about relationships. The entrepreneur who, obsessed with failure, makes fear-based decisions that paradoxically increase the probability of failure. At the social level, societies that, fearing social collapse, implement control measures that effectively erode the social cohesion they try to protect. Nations that, worried about security threats, adopt policies that create the very conditions of instability they fear. At the global level, humanity, the conscious of climate change, continues behaviors that accelerate these changes, apparently unable to break established patterns, even when recognizing their destructive consequences. The profound insight of the myth is that we often create what we most fear through the very efforts to avoid it. This dynamic suggests the need for a radically different approach to facing complex challenges, an approach that recognizes how our fears and attempts at control can inadvertently produce the results we seek to avoid. The impossible family. Identity in the postmodern era deconstruction of traditional structures, Oedipus's marriage to Jocasta, who is simultaneously his mother, creates a family that defies conventional categories of relationship. His children are simultaneously his siblings. His wife is his mother. He is both father and son in the same family structure. This impossible configuration serves as a metaphor for the complexities of identity in the postmodern era. In contemporary society, traditional identity structures, nuclear family, fixed gender roles, linear careers, stable national identities, are being constantly deconstructed and reconstructed. Individuals navigate multiple identities that may seem contradictory or incompatible when viewed through traditional lenses. Consider the modern person who is simultaneously daughter and caregiver to elderly parents, competitive professional and devoted mother, local citizen and digital nomad, introverted in face-to-face interactions, but extroverted on social networks. Like the characters in the Oedipal family, we occupy multiple roles that may seem logically incompatible, but are lived simultaneously in the complexity of real experience. The question of authenticity. Oedipus's discovery of his true identity raises profound questions about authenticity that resonate strongly in the era of social networks and digital identities. Who is the real Oedipus? The shepherd's son he believed himself to be, the prince of Thebes he really was, or the wise king he became? This question multiplies exponentially in the digital context, where individuals maintain multiple online personas that may differ significantly from their offline identities. Postmodern philosophy suggests that the search for authentic and fixed identity may be fundamentally misguided. Instead, identity may be better understood as a dynamic and contextual process, a narrative that we construct and continuously reconstruct in response to changing circumstances and new information about ourselves. Oedipus's trauma upon discovering his true identity reflects our own cultural anxiety about authenticity in a world where the boundaries between the real and the constructed have become increasingly fluid. His reaction, literally blinding himself, can be seen as a metaphor for our temptation to avoid the complexity of multiple identity in favor of simpler narratives, even when those simplified narratives cause us suffering. The digital oracle, prophecy and algorithm, the nature of prediction. The oracles in Oedipus's story function as prediction systems that provide information about the future, but in ways that often make that future more probable through the very prediction. This dynamic finds fascinating parallels in the era of predictive algorithms and big data. Consider how modern algorithms make prophecies about human behavior, recommendation systems that predict what we want to buy, watch, or read, credit score algorithms that predict our financial reliability, hiring systems that predict our professional performance. Like ancient oracles, these predictions often become self-fulfilling. If an algorithm predicts that someone is a bad credit risk, that person may have difficulty obtaining loans, which can create the precarious financial conditions that confirm the original prediction. If a recommendation system continues suggesting certain types of content, it gradually shapes the user's tastes and preferences in the direction of those suggestions. This similarity between ancient oracles and modern algorithms suggests that we are dealing with a fundamental characteristic of the relationship between knowledge and reality. Information about the future is not neutral, but active, shaping the future it claims merely to describe. The democratization of prophecy in the digital age. We all have access to forms of oracular knowledge through search engines, social networks, and applications that promise to reveal truths about ourselves and predict our future. Online personality tests, matching algorithms in dating apps, DNA analyses that promise to reveal our genetic heritage and health predispositions. All of these represent democratized versions of the Delphic oracle. But as Oedipus discovered, having access to information is not the same as having wisdom to interpret it or act on it constructively. The abundance of data about ourselves can paradoxically increase our confusion about who we really are and what we should do with our lives. The contemporary Sphinx. Challenges of the digital era. New monsters. Ancient patterns. If we relocate the story to the 21st century, the Sphinx can be seen as a metaphor for the algorithmic challenges we face daily. Like the original Sphinx, these challenges present riddles that seem intellectual, but require profoundly human understanding to be truly solved. Consider some contemporary Sphinx riddles. The attention riddle. In a world of infinite distraction, how do we maintain focus on what really matters? The answer is not technical, but existential. It requires understanding about values, purpose, and meaning. The connection riddle. How do we maintain genuine relationships in an era of digital communication? The solution lies not in new technologies, but in ancient wisdom about vulnerability, presence, and emotional intimacy. The information riddle. How do we distinguish truth from misinformation in an environment of information overload? The answer requires not just technical fact-checking skills, but wisdom about human nature, motivation, and the difference between knowledge and understanding. Artificial intelligence, as the new Sphinx artificial intelligence represents perhaps the most sophisticated version of the Sphinx that humanity has ever faced. Like the original Sphinx, AI presents challenges that test not only our technical intelligence, but our fundamental understanding of what it means to be human. AI's riddles include questions that cannot be solved merely through more sophisticated programming. How do we ensure that AI systems remain aligned with human values when those values are often contradictory and contextually dependent? How do we maintain meaningful human agency in a world where algorithms can make more rational decisions than humans? How do we preserve human dignity when machines can surpass humans in tasks that traditionally defined our uniqueness? The answer to these riddles, like Oedipus's answer to the original Sphinx, may require not greater technical sophistication, but greater clarity about our own human nature. Technology and destiny. The illusion of control, the paradox of technological control. Laius's attempt to avoid the prophecy by killing Oedipus can be seen as a metaphor for our relationship with technology. Often, we develop technologies with the intention of increasing our control over the environment and our future, but these same technologies can create unintended consequences that limit our autonomy in ways we don't anticipate. Consider some examples: social networks, created to connect people and democratize communication, but which also created echo chambers, amplified political polarization, and contributed to mental health epidemics. Optimization algorithms, designed to increase efficiency and convenience, but which can also create dependency, reduce serendipity, and limit exposure to diverse ideas and experiences. Artificial intelligence, developed to augment human capabilities, but which may also displace workers, concentrate power in few corporations, and create new forms of inequality. The wisdom of acceptance, Oedipus's final blinding, can be interpreted not merely as self-punishment, but as a profound recognition of the limits of human control. There is paradoxical wisdom in accepting that some aspects of the human condition, our mortality, our vulnerability, our interdependence, cannot be solved through knowledge or technology, but must be accepted as integral parts of human experience. This wisdom is particularly relevant for our era, where we often seek technological solutions to fundamental existential problems. Anxiety, loneliness, the feeling of lack of purpose, these are not technical problems to be solved, but aspects of the human condition to be understood and integrated. Lessons for the 21st century: integrating knowledge and wisdom. Oedipus's story offers crucial insights for navigating the complexity of the digital age. 1. Recognize the difference between information and wisdom. Having access to data is not equivalent to having understanding. Wisdom requires integration of knowledge with experience, analysis with intuition, intellect with emotion. 2. Cultivate self-knowledge. In a world of constant external distraction, the development of internal awareness becomes even more crucial. Knowing our own motivations, fears, and behavior patterns is essential to avoid the Oedipal traps of creating what we most fear. 3. Accept complexity and ambiguity. The search for simple answers to complex problems often creates more problems. Oedipal wisdom suggests that some tensions must be held in balance rather than resolved. 4. Recognize interdependence. Oedipus's impossible family reflects our own radical interdependence. In a globalized and digitally connected world, our actions have consequences that extend far beyond our immediate awareness. A new digital humanism, the myth of Oedipus, reinterpreted for our era, suggests the need for a new humanism that integrates technological advances with perennial wisdom about human nature. This digital humanism would recognize that technology is most powerful when it amplifies distinctly human capacities rather than trying to replace them. True progress requires not only technical innovation, but growth in wisdom, compassion, and self-knowledge. The most important problems of our era require solutions that integrate technical knowledge with deep understanding of human nature. The riddle continues the story of Oedipus. The Sphinx remains relevant, not because it offers easy answers, but because it articulates eternal questions in ways that continue to challenge and illuminate our contemporary experience. In a world where we face algorithmic sphinxes and digital oracles, where our attempts to control the future often create the problems we fear, ancient wisdom about the limits and possibilities of the human condition becomes not just relevant, but essential. The Sphinx's riddle, about the nature of humanity in different stages of life, continues to resonate because it captures something fundamental about our experience. We are creatures of constant transformation, dependent on different forms of support at different moments, always in the process of becoming who we are destined to be. In the digital age, perhaps our task is not to solve this riddle once and for all, but to continue living it with greater awareness, compassion, and wisdom. After all, the answer to the Sphinx's question was not just man. It was the recognition that we are, each of us, the living answer to this eternal riddle about what it means to be human in a cosmos, both beautiful and mysterious.